I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we uncover the transformative journey of Gregory Works, author of a powerful book. It is called Life on the Other Side of Trials, Transplants, Transition, and Transformation. Gregory's incredible story as a two-time kidney transplant recipient offers hope, resilience, and practical strategies for overcoming chronic illness. Packed with faith, personal insights, and even humor, this book is a must-read for anyone who is facing life's toughest challenges. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his powerful book. The links are below this interview. Gregory, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Hey, great to see you, Logan.
Wonderful to have you on the show. When did you start having problems with your kidneys? How old were you? How long ago was that? Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Well, I really didn't start having them. What transpired is I went to the doctor to just have a physical, and when I went to have the physical, I came back, and the doctor came back and said, "Greg, I need you to go back in. I want to have some additional tests run."
Hmm.
And as he was running the test, we came back, sat down. I was in his office for less than 2 minutes, and he said, "You have polycystic kidney disease."
Hmm.
Uh, Polycystic kidney disease, which they call PKD, is a disease that's hereditary in my family.
Hmm.
It goes back multiple generations. My mother had it, my grandmother had it. My sisters were diagnosed. They're a couple years younger than me. And I was actually the last person to actually get diagnosed. So I wasn't necessarily surprised. I wasn't feeling any of the effects.
Hmm.
Uh, However, my blood pressure was high or borderline high. I always attributed that to stress
Hmm.
based on the jobs, but he showed me the results of my test, and what it showed me is a number of there were a whole bunch of small cysts that surrounded my kidneys, and
Hmm.
that's what polycystic kidney disease actually is. They press up against your kidneys.
Yeah.
But that's how I learned, just through a routine physical,
Amazing.
that I had PKD.
Horrible, horrible. Did you have to go on dialysis? How long was it until your condition worsened? And at what point did you need a transplant?
Well, what we did initially is my wife, at the time, she's an attorney,
Mhm.
and she went and she was doing medical malpractice. So she
Mhm.
had access to some of the best people as it relates to trying to identify what types of doctors, and the doctors we were looking for, nephrologists. And given that I live outside of Washington, D.C., she said, "Look, we want to get the best." So we went to Johns Hopkins.
Yeah.
And upon going to Johns Hopkins, uh, I had the opportunity to sit down with a nephrologist.
Mhm.
That nephrologist shared with me that she was going to monitor me, and based on my lab work and the numbers, uh, she shared with me two or three different things. One, that she was going to monitor for the next X number of years.
Mhm.
Two, that I I would probably be on medication for the rest of my life.
Mhm.
Uh, and the third thing she told me is one day I may need a kidney transplant. And when I heard that, at the time I was 39 years old, and I kind of smirked at her,
Mhm.
and said, "Hey, look, I'm healthy. I run all the time. You had shared with me earlier that your
Mhm.
daughter went to University of Maryland. Well,
Yep.
I used to go over to University of Maryland and run the stadium stairs.
Yeah.
So you understand what that stadium looks
Yeah.
like, and it's
Exactly.
pretty daunting.
Yeah.
So I wasn't concerned about medication. I believed that I would be able to beat the high blood pressure thing.
Mhm.
But that was that. And then the second thing was, she said, "I may need a kidney transplant." I said, "Yeah, I may need one, but I'll probably be 65 when that happens." So I wasn't thinking about that. But little did I know, a few years later, I was going to need a kidney.
Yeah.
You also asked me another question as it relates to dialysis. She shared with me in that meeting that, well, not in that meeting, but in subsequent meetings, that it was her goal to ensure that I did not have to go through dialysis on this first transplant.
Hmm.
So based on how she was monitoring me, that did not happen.
Hmm. Amazing. Well, you were smart. You went to a top hospital, a university hospital, a teaching hospital, the best in the world are at that facility, and you got the best in the world treatment. And so I think that probably made a huge change in your prognosis. Um, was it difficult to get a kidney, a recipient, donor?
It was, how do I say this? It took me about a year.
Hmm.
It took me about a year. When I learned that I needed a kidney, the timing of this was somewhat challenging because about a couple of weeks before that, I learned that my wife and I learned that she was pregnant, and we
Hmm.
were expecting our first child.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, I go in to meet with folks at the transplant center at Johns Hopkins. I sat down with them for about 4 hours, and coming out of that meeting, I learned that I needed a kidney.
Hmm.
So I was just really in a state of shock as it relates to that. But from
Yeah.
that point, I moved forward in terms of trying to get a kidney or identify a donor. And in doing that, I started looking through a different number of different steps. I first looked at my family to see who could donate. But on my mother's side of the family, I eliminated them almost immediately because that's where the disease
Right.
originated. When I looked at my father's side of the family, I looked and said, my father's the youngest of 12. So most of those people were older,
Hmm.
and given their age, they had their own health issues.
Hmm.
So then I began looking at my close friends, and I actually delved in, and I was fortunate enough to be able to identify a number of people that were in my wedding party that got tested and other close friends. And within about 6 to 8 months, we were able to identify 3 people. And then we narrowed it down to one, and we moved forward. A couple of months after my wife gave birth to our first child.
Amazing. So it turned out to be one of your friends who donated their kidney to you?
Absolutely. He didn't hesitate at all.
Amazing.
What people don't understand is when you're going through that process, you learn a lot about people. You learn about who is with you and who's not with you.
Yeah.
Uh, you learn about those people that don't hesitate. I learned who was close from a family perspective, who wasn't
Mm.
close from a family perspective. Uh, and it's good to know who's with you.
Yeah.
When you're in the midst of you're in the middle of the fire, it's great to know who's with you.
Yeah. It's amazing though. It's such a amazing selfless act to give someone one of your organs, to undergo major surgery, to give someone a body part. I mean, it's a wonderful gift of love, a wonderful sacrifice. I mean, I'd imagine you and this person are extremely close till this day.
Very close,
Yeah.
very close. This first person that gave me this kidney, uh, we go back, and it's ironic. We People ask me the question, did we ever, how was he feeling about this whole thing? I said, you know what, we really did not have a serious conversation until after we had the transplant. We
Amazing.
carried on like we always carried on. Uh, And the thing that I like about him, and it's interesting, my father told me probably 15 years before I had my transplant, he said, there's something about him. I don't know what it is about him, but there's something I like about him more so than all of your friends.
Wow.
And he ended up coming back to me and telling me, playing back the relationships that led me to him. And it started out when I was 6 years old and he was 5 years old. And
Amazing.
we didn't even live in the same city.
Yeah.
But he played back every single relationship that got me to him when we landed in college, and then we followed one another for a number of years.
Hmm.
And I look at this and I sit back and say, I've got a real strong and deep network,
Yeah.
but I could have never orchestrated what happened. And that's when you know that God is in the midst of your
Yeah.
situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. There are angels among us. And the donor who gave you his kidney is absolutely one of those angels. Now, you needed a second kidney. Tell us about that.
Yes, I needed a second kidney. I I learned or early on that we were having challenges. I was having challenges with my first kidney. And based on that, I'd had a number of different biopsies. And probably around year 4 or 5, uh, the doctor shared with me indirectly that we were trying to get to 10 years with this kidney.
Hmm.
And she shared with me that I would probably need another kidney. Uh, and she just wanted to monitor me. And throughout the next 4 or 5 years, I really, really went through it. I mean, when I had my first one, they noticed that I lost a little bit of weight,
Right.
but they didn't notice the things that were happening the first time. The second time, I went through everything. I went back and naturally, I had studied the disease, I'd studied the symptoms. I had all the symptoms, high blood pressure, low urine output, fatigued. I could be driving and doze and almost fall asleep while I'm driving.
Right.
Uh, I was anemic, uh, all the different things. I used to deal with gout in a major way, but the biggest thing is I ended up losing a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I generally weigh anywhere between 170 and 175 pounds, and I lost 30 to 40 pounds. And when you say, when you sit back and look at this, you recognize people were looking at me trying to figure out whether or not I was going to still be with them, whether or not I was going to
Yeah.
die. Nobody said, "Hey, Greg, you're going to die." But I know people were whispering. My wife shared with me, people were whispering. But I never believed that I was not going to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Was the weight loss intentional? Were you to try to lower the blood pressure, or was it
No,
simply a consequence of being ill?
just a consequence of being ill. I mean,
Amazing.
I lost that much weight once because of a medication I was taking, and the doctors didn't want to take me off that medication.
Right.
And I pressed upon them. And I had a friend of mine that shared with me that had a transplant. He said, "Hey, look, I was on that same medication, and I lost maybe 40 to 50 pounds." He said, but for me, I needed to lose the weight. He
Yeah.
said, you can't afford to lose that kind of weight." And I finally
Amazing.
went back, pleaded with the doctor, and she took me off that and put me on something else, and my weight came back up. But I lost it, as I said, I lost that weight. I mean, it's something when you sit back and your boss comes to you and she says, "Hey, Greg, how are things going?" Matter of fact, I hadn't worked for her for about 6 months, and she could see the change that was taking place with me physically. My clothes were hanging off
Right.
my body.
Right. Did you at one point say, we're almost out of time here, and the rest is in this wonderful book. It's an incredible journey of hope, resilience, perseverance, and faith. Um, but were you ever like, why me? I'm a young man. I just had a baby. I went through one kidney transplant. Now I got to go through this again. Were you angry, frustrated? Tell us.
No, I wasn't angry. Uh, and your question is very valid.
Hmm.
But I I never said, "Why me? Woe is me." I looked at this and said, almost the reverse. Why not me?
Yeah.
You know, why not me? Uh, I believe that God chose me to go through this because he knew that he could use me. And not only could he use me, that I was going to go out and tell this story. This was not about me. I look at this as his story, and I represent the vessel to actually share with others uh, what I actually went through, that they too can make it. Um, and just to be resilient about this. I mean, this has transformed and changed my entire life.
I'm sure. I'm sure. It has transformed your life. This book will be transformative for other people's lives as well, because everybody's going through something. Everybody's got a challenge. Looking at how you faced your challenges with such faith and bravery and courage, I think is truly inspiring. The name of the book is Triumph: Life on the Other Side of Trials, Transplants, transitions, and transformation. It is Gregory's incredible story as a two-time kidney transplant recipient, and the story offers hope, resilience, and practical strategies for overcoming chronic illness. Greg, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you for having me, Logan.
Great having you on the show. I appreciate your insights and your candor. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.